What's up, everybody? Bandit Chad here, coming to you from a very rainy Taco Tuesday. And we have some really exciting news this week. So there was a Ford Ranger spy testing in the United States, and it looks very similar to the Wildtrak package that you can get on Rangers for the global market. Now, what that basically includes is it has kind of like a sport bar there in the bed, and it also has some roof rack similar to what you could get on a Tacoma or something like that, to where if you wanted to tie some kayaks or something like that up there. But the most interesting part about this is we haven't seen one of these testing a whole lot in the United States. Now, with the global Wildtrak Ranger, you do have several different interesting options that you can get with it, and it kind of falls somewhere between what you consider a TRD Sport and a TRD Off-Road. You know, it's certainly more of a upgraded trim level. It's not necessarily the top-end trim level, but it can be optioned with a rear e-locker and some other different things like you'd find on the Tacomas. But the most interesting thing about this whole story is it looks like this particular truck was spied with a diesel engine. Right. Now, yeah, there's several different options this could be, right?
Yes, so there are three different diesel variants that we believe this can be. This could be, first off, a twin-turbo, four-cylinder turbo diesel that we did see is going to be coming in the Ranger Raptor across the pond from us.
Right.
Over there.
There's still no more word on whether or not we will get that truck.
Right.
But the two other options seem a lot more likely, right?
Right. So one of the other options that this could very well be is the five-cylinder turbo diesel that is in the Ford Transit Connects here in the States, which I feel like is probably the more likely thing, because it wouldn't be too hard for them to take that out and then put it into this vehicle, because the U.S. EPA has already cleared it and everything. It's U.S. compliant as far as emissions are concerned. But then the final option that this could be is a detuned version of the Powerstroke V6 that is going to be going in the F-150s here soon. You know, that is the biggest option out of the ones that we did just list, which would probably yield the highest torque and horsepower numbers, but we feel like for the smaller application, it would probably be detuned to some extent.
Right, and you know, you don't want to have the same power output. I mean, we would like to have the same power output that we would see in the F-150 as in the Ranger, but more than likely Ford is going to keep their pecking order and not necessarily do that. But again, the most likely option there is the 3.2 liter 5-cylinder diesel that is found there in the Transit van, and that same diesel is actually what's in the Ranger overseas. And really interesting fact, not only can that diesel be had with the automatic, but it can also be bought with a manual. So not only would Ford one-up GM with their diesel size, you know, the Baby Duramax is a 2.8 liter, this would be a 3.2, but you'd also get one more cylinder, probably comparable, if not a little bit more horsepower and torque, and the option for a manual transmission. I know a lot of us weren't super stoked about the EcoBoost being the only option there in the Ranger for an engine. I think, you know, for some people that might be a really great option. It does make decent power, you know, it is very nice to drive, but for people that are using their trucks as a daily thing, and you know, a lot of people go to a mid-sized truck to make it more cheaper, honestly.
Cheaper, easier to park,
right.
A bit smaller, all those things that come with it, and not necessarily better fuel economy, but if you do put a turbo diesel in there, possible.
Right, but the key for Ford, I think, is to keep all of this somewhat reasonably priced so people buy a ton of these trucks. You know, obviously the more units they move, the better it'll be for consumers, because we'll have more aftermarket support, but also Ford will have, you know, better profits and everything else. So more than likely, this is, again, the 5-cylinder 3.2 liter diesel there. And if that is the case, I would love to see the manual transmission, because, you know, we haven't seen a manual transmission diesel truck other than a 1-ton truck in a really long time.
Right.
So this would be really great news. Be sure to let us know what you all think in the comments below. But we do have a little bit of other news here to cover for this week. And we'll start here with Toyota and some of their transmission designs, right?
Okay, so for the upcoming years, it seems that Toyota, well, they did release a I guess a memo of sorts that was kind of laying out their plans for the next several years leading up to the year 2023. And their plans involve a new CVT design, among some other things, but basically they're trying to make the CVT even more of a livable and nice transmission to have in a vehicle than they currently already have. So basically it involves a takeoff gear of sorts that do give you more of a, I guess, a less delayed feeling when you do take off. It's going to feel much more direct. So this is kind of, in a way, the first iteration of an automatic mixed with a CVT, because it does utilize a gear and can switch between that gear and the belt system that CVTs do use within them. So overall, this does lead to what Toyota is saying, a much more not necessarily sporty, but a direct engagement feeling within your vehicle, while also having some fuel economy benefits as well. They did say that there was some sort of percentage difference increase with this new transmission when coupled up to a new engine that they did kind of mention in this, and it's a 2-liter direct injected 4-cylinder, which Toyota is already kind of messing with this same type of I guess it's called a tumble flow intake of sorts, something to that effect, that they are using right now in the 4-cylinder in the Camry, which is why it's an even more powerful 4-cylinder than they've had before. And I did actually get the opportunity to drive this 4-cylinder Camry when I did go up to Maryland to visit our friend Chuck. That was just something that I had done. We happened to be in the area and did kind of get to check that out, so that was really fun. But back to what Toyota was saying in this memo, there's a lot of other powertrain things that they are going to be putting this in. There are going to be some hybrid options as well, where they do, I guess, make this for a hybrid powertrain between the Camry, possibly the Corolla. And Toyota was saying that they do have hopes that they will be putting this in about 80% of their vehicle lineup between the United States, Japan, and Europe. So that's a very large amount of their lineup. I would imagine mostly their passenger vehicles. But it sounds like Toyota is definitely going towards a more efficient, engaging, and possibly a more electrified future for their vehicles.
That's exactly right. And what really this should address is, a lot of people really like the fuel benefits, fuel economy benefits rather, that you would see from a CVT, but a lot of CVTs have a really rubbery, kind of spongy feeling, and they're not, as Chad was saying, they're not necessarily, sporty, but they're not even really engaging to drive. So if Toyota can address some of this, reap some of the benefits of an automatic transmission, but some of the efficiency numbers of a CVT, I think it'll be a win-win all around. So our next story this week actually comes from Mahindra. Many of y'all might not be familiar with Mahindra, but they're actually an India-based company that makes a lot of agriculture and farming type tractors and so on. But they're talking about they're calling their Roxor lineup, which is an off-highway vehicle lineup, to America. Now all these vehicles are going to be built, as it says here, in Auburn Hills, Michigan, and it's going to be more or less just for the United States. Now they're saying this is going to be somewhat of a side-by-side type competitor, but it is going to, they're saying, kind of revolutionize the market. So what this kind of sounds like to me, and from the company that's making it, it would kind of surprise me if it wasn't something kind of like a CJ2A or a CJ3A, where it is a street legal vehicle, but it can be used for, farming or getting the job done wherever that might take you. But it looked more or less like a little bit smaller footprint of, say, a Jeep, or a little bit larger than a side-by-side. But we'll know more about this here within the next month or so. They said they're going to release all the specs here within the next month. So really interesting idea there. I think a lot of us are really, really interested in, say, Jeeps and those type of off-highway vehicles that can still be driven on the road. But the problem with those are they're getting so much larger and much more expensive. Just a 2-door Rubicon right now, I optioned one the other day on the online configurator, and you can get them well north of $50,000 just in a 2-door variant. So, if you would add all the options to a 4-door, you're probably looking at close to $60,000 just for a Rubicon, and that is insane. They're certainly a very capable vehicle, but that is certainly a lot of money.
Yeah, so our last story for this week does come from FCA, and they are saying that by the year 2022 that they will not be having any diesels of any sort in their vehicle lineup. Now this does exclude Ram heavy-duty trucks, but where this cutoff kind of lays for, say, the Jeep Wrangler, because we know that they are planning on putting that eco diesel in the points where they cut off for cars or vehicles or trucks, what they're considering it. But that's all we know as of right now. Obviously, Ram heavy-duty trucks, they're going to continue to keep that Cummins inline 6 in there. That's not going to go anywhere. And frankly, diesel heavy-duty trucks probably aren't going anywhere for a very, very long time unless something happens with technology that just completely changes the whole game and diesels are just considered obsolete. And
right.
At this point, they are.
But FCA is already talking about, with some of their products, we've been talking about it in the past, with the eTorque system, which is kind of like a hybrid option that you can add on to a lot of their existing engines. And maybe they're going to be replacing a lot of those motors with eTorque motors. Maybe they're going to be something else. All that remains to be seen. And obviously, a lot of the vehicles under the FCA umbrella that are featured with diesel power plants are a lot overseas. I believe Alfa Romeo has several diesels in their lineup and a few other companies. But again, we're not exactly sure where the line is drawn, whether it's strictly cars or whether it's their vehicles in general or whether it includes their heavy-duty trucks or wherever else. Again, really excluding diesel heavy-duty trucks already seems to be kind of a big misstep, in my opinion at least. But we will see, and we'll be sure to keep you all up to date with all of that. So thank you all very much for watching. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
See you guys.